You're listening to Inside iOS Dev, episode number 9. How to do an iOS engineer job search after being laid off. You're listening to Inside iOS Dev, a show about real-world iOS development. Here with your host, Andrew Rohn.
And Alex Bush.
And in today's episode, we're going to talk about what to do when you get laid off from your first software engineering job. And this is based off my experience of getting laid off just about 2 months ago. So this is fresh. Wanted to cover it. Well, I just got through the process. It's fresh in my mind, both mentally and emotionally. And I think this is great content to share with you guys. Because I think there's tons of stuff that I learned from, and I hope you guys will learn from me the things that I had to learn.
And I just wanted to add that there is a happy ending to this story, so that you all know. But yeah.
Yes. So we're gonna jump into that today. We're gonna talk about the story of kind of do a story format of how it all went down. And just kind of some of the things I learned along the way.
So yeah, Andrew. So how it all started?
Reddit is hiring. Head to about.reddit.com and tell them Andrew from Inside iOS Dev sent you.
So yeah, Andrew. So how it all started?
Yeah, I was not expecting it. So I come into work one day on a Monday. And we do our stand-up. As soon as we finish our stand-up, manager says, "Hey, Andrew, just want to talk with you," and pulls me into a meeting room. So right away, I mean, that never happened. So right away, I was like, "Oh, what's going on? Why am I having a meeting with the manager?
What's going on?"
It was very quick, just to make it even quicker than it was. Basically, I mean, within 10 minutes, I was told, "Hey, Wanilo is changing direction. Glad you worked here, but we're just not gonna need the role that you fill anymore. And today you're gonna be laid off."
Right. So
how
did that feel?
It was heavy, man.
Mm-hmm.
It was heavy. I just think it's one of those things you can't really prepare for. I felt a lot of different emotions at that moment. I felt embarrassment. I felt confusion. I felt a sense of like, what did I do wrong? I felt like some sort of personal responsibility. Lots of like basically negative emotion, right? Just a mixture of negative emotion. Yeah, I mean, after that, I was escorted out of the building, just grabbed my stuff, and left the building. And then right after that, I think me and you met.
Yeah, we chatted a little on about what happened, because it was a surprise to me, or a shock rather, as well.
Right.
So kind of again unexpected, as you said.
Yeah, and so me and Alex are both having these emotions. And just for context for other people who might just be listening for the first time, we had been pair programming at Wanilo together for the past year.
Right. Yeah.
So we had grown quite close. When you work with someone, day in, day out, team of two, y'all are going to be working very closely every single day. You get quite close with that person. So yeah, this was.
And another thing is that we kind of got very efficient with that. So the second thought I had is, oh my God, am I going to find another one like this?
Yeah.
It's going to be very hard. So what happened after that?
So the next day I woke up and I was like, okay, still feeling these emotions, but much less, right? The initial shock of the first day wore off. And I said, okay, well, what are you going to do next, right? You can't just sit here and feel sorry for yourself. So one thing is I wanted to research about the process of getting laid off and what it even meant to be laid off in the first place. This had never happened to me. And also, this is my first professional job as a software engineer. You know, it's like I felt like, wow, this is the start of my career, and like this is a shock to me. Like, you know, it's not fun when it's your first year, and this is kind of an experience you have to go through. So basically, one thing I learned was reading. What I learned and what I did was just reading about what it means to get laid off. Like, what is it to get laid off? And I think that an important distinction to make here is there's a difference between being laid off and there's a difference between being fired.
Mm-hmm.
So being laid off is essentially what we told you earlier at Winilo. It's through no fault of your own. The company, for whatever reason, does not need the role that you were filling. Whatever business reasons they have, and you just happen to be the person that had to be asked to part from the company and be laid off. So it's no fault of your own.
Which, on the contrary, like if you're fired,
and if you're fired, that is, because it was something that was your fault,
like
right?
you underperformed maybe, or
performance issue or whatever
Right, yeah.
whatever it did. Probably performance issue is the most common. And the reason why I think that's important to know is because one thing is, I think, an emotion you might feel is like, is it my fault? What did I do wrong? And with being laid off, you need to know that it's not your fault. Don't feel bad. Just it's not your fault. It's okay. And the other thing is kind of a legalistic distinction is, if you are laid off, you are eligible for
unemployment.
Yeah, so if you're laid off, you're eligible for unemployment insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're fired, you're not. And I will kind of talk about unemployment insurance later.
Okay.
The other thing I did was I was reading about other people's experience getting laid off. I just kind of wanted to understand what happened to other people and kind of learn from their experience. So what are next steps? What do I need to do? One thing is I needed to sign up for unemployment ASAP, unemployment insurance. So this is might just be a U.S. specific thing, but unemployment insurance is basically a kind of a social safety net in the United States, where you're paid. You're given some money basically after you're laid off to help you as you transition into getting another job. But the key thing here is your unemployment payout does not begin the day you were laid off. It begins the day you sign up for unemployment insurance. So you want to sign up for that as soon as possible.
Mm.
Yeah. The other thing I was reading was people were saying take some time off, but not too much, right? So you want to take some time off because you just went through this big emotional event, and in a way, like, you're losing your job. It's like you're mourning in a way. You're mourning your identity with this with your work there and in your time at the job, and you're mourning the loss of you used to work with these people and the bonds that you formed with the people. You're not going to be with them anymore. So take some time off, but I think you don't want to take too much, right? Because you don't want to feel sorry for yourself. You don't want to get stuck in a rut. You want to keep moving. So what I did was I personally took about 2 or 3 days off. It's different for everyone, but that was working. I think that worked out for me. Another thing you want to do is find out what you're going to do about health insurance. Do you want to pay for COBRA, or just make sure health insurance that's very important. Another this would be a nice thing to do, because you're going to be going into a job search soon, right? I would get any information that's going to be helpful for your job search.
If like things like let's say you want to find out how much a feature you built impacted the business, right? So then you can kind of present it on your resume as one of your achievements at the
Yes,
job,
exactly.
right? Yeah, like those things are they're just useful in general, but in this specific case, it's great to have it if you can.
Right. To find those. So yes, find those hard numbers, and document them so that you can put those on your resume. So you can say, hey, I improved X by Y%.
So did you start after that? Did you start with what was your next step? Like now you're at this crossroads, right? You need to start your job hunt, job search.
Right.
What was your first move?
So yeah, once I took time to reflect, I said, okay, what's going to be my next move? And for me personally, I thought, well, I don't want to like rush into applying for companies. I don't think that's smart for me to do, for a couple reasons. One is I don't want to like uh, come across as like desperate or like um, feel like come across as like rushed in the interview process. Like I desperately need something. I think that's a negative signal to your potential employer. The other thing was I wanted to spend time preparing for interviews because, as we know, technical interviews can be quite challenging. Um, so yeah, what I basically decided to do was, okay, this next week I will not start applying right away. What I'm going to do is just start prepping for interviews. And let me just actually make one more comment. I understand that not everyone could be lucky to do something like even take like an extra week off to study. So in this case, I had saved money to be able to support myself for some times. So I felt very privileged in that way. And I understand that not everyone could be in that situation. So of course, this advice does not apply to everyone. If you need to find a job right away, because you like even 1 week you cannot waste, then obviously you got to do what you got to do.
Right, but probably would be a smart thing to have some cash aside, right?
Yeah, which is that's a separate discussion.
Yes.
But yeah, you should save money, of course. Because then, yeah, it allowed me in this situation, that emergency fund that I had allowed me to have a little bit of a buffer. So when I was interviewing, I did not feel desperate that I needed a job tomorrow, basically. So yeah, I made that decision, and I spent the next week basically preparing for interviews. And what that meant was prepping my resume and studying for interviews. And for the resume, basically, try to get those numbers like I discussed earlier. You can say, I wrote this feature X and it had this performance improvement Y. It's going to look great if you can have real numbers. And run your resume by people. There, it's really useful. Run them by some of your peers and any of your mentors.
Right, and one addition to that numbers on your resume. It's also like it's in a way if you put that information there, you will stand out from other applicants, because most people most likely will just put some technologies that they use, which is also great, right? But again, using technologies for the sake of using them is well, you want the results, right? And your prospective employers want to see the results of your work, right?
Yeah. So then, studying for interviews, what did I do and how did I do that? As we all know, the technical interviewing for software engineer job is quite difficult, especially when you're in this like specialty subfield like iOS development. It's not just general software engineering you need to know. You need to know general software engineering, and you need to know the iOS ecosystem, all the different things that you need to know in there about the SDKs that you're using, and also a part of the iOS SD ecosystem. Now, with Objective C and Swift both being used kind of simultaneously at this point, not everyone has switched to Swift. You have to know 2 languages in a way, right? So as an iOS developer, you have to know a lot of information. So as I was studying for interviews, I realized that I had a lot of gaps that I needed to fill. I learned a lot at Wanilo, but of course, when you're working at one place, you're probably only going to solve only a certain subset of what you could learn in the iOS ecosystem. So that was something hard to face, of looking at taking stock of what I knew, what I was good at, and looking at all my weaknesses that I needed in terms of like knowledge gaps that I either needed to refresh or actually like learn just kind of from scratch in a way. So I kind of like talk quickly like how I did that concretely.
Yeah, like what were those specific things, I guess, that you kind of needed to brush up on?
Yeah. So I feel like there's broad class of certain types of questions. So the one is the algorithms one, and that's the like when you think of like the Google interview, right? Like,
The complexity of big O of searching, traversing through
yeah,
binary
like
tree or
yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like verify that this is actually a binary tree, or like print, you know, only the like, or like a rotate a matrix or
Right,
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Those kind of like algorithm Google style questions. That's one. And the way I studied for that, and the way I always recommend people to, is I personally just like lead code. There's tons of books. There's tons of different resources. There's Career Cup. There's Cracking the Coding Interview. There's Hacker Rank. I like lead code. I've found that the questions that are on there are very close to other interview questions that I've had. They match very closely.
You're not. You're actually maybe like seventh person who tells me about this. So that thing seems to be very popular for that.
And it's that simple. It's just a website with a huge list of algorithms questions ranked in from like ranked in difficulty level, and you just go through them. So you start at the easiest, and then you just kind of work up and up in difficulty as you get better and better. And what I gotta say about that is, it just takes practice, just doing it. You just gotta. I really feel like there is no shortcut, but if I were to say there was a shortcut, is just keep doing it over and over. Pattern recognition eventually is going to take over, and you're going to see that actually a lot of these algorithm questions are kind of the same question, just like dressed up in a different disguise.
I actually remember like we met several times after that when you were like in your job hunt process, and I remember you kind of mentioning this. Oh, like I can see now, just glancing at this question, algorithmic question, that this is a recursion problem, right? Or this one is
This one's going to use backtracking.
right, or this one can be solved with like hash dictionary style solution, and so on. So yeah, it makes sense.
Another type of question is iOS specific knowledge. So that's going to be stuff like I would say that includes like the language, like Objective C. Common question is about how, or I guess both Objective C and Swift, is how was memory management handled? You know, automatic reference counting, and part of that is knowing like they might ask, well, like how does it? Can you explain it to me, kind of high level, like how it works? What's like the difference between a weak and a strong pointer?
Do they still ask you ARC versus MRC? You know, the manual retain count versus.
Thank God, no.
Okay. Used to be back in my day.
Other iOS specific stuff. GCD. How does GCD work? Don't do networking on the main thread.
Right.
Do long latency tasks on a background thread, not on the main thread, right? What's other iOS specific stuff?
I guess, you know, things around table views, collection views, like the bread and butter of
Right.
iOS development.
Yeah, know how to implement a table view and a collection view. It's like they're in every iOS app, so they're gonna of course come up in an interview question. Know that stuff. Brush up a little bit on core data. Core data is common. Threading questions are common.
Or how you do networking, right?
Networking
like
questions are common.
HTTP and all.
Caching on the iOS client, maybe a little bit of like knowing about you're on a device with constrained memory and constrained processing resource. Like, how do you work around that? That kind of stuff. iOS specific knowledge. The other thing is more I would say more generic software engineering stuff. No OOP, no like design, no different architecture patterns, no like MVC, MVVM, that kind of stuff. That's another classification of questions that are asked. And then I would say the last one is kind of the soft, and I'm air quoting here, like the soft questions like, oh, what's your favorite library in iOS? Or tell me about the hardest technical challenge you've come across. And part of these soft ones are like kind of the cultural ones, like let's say you and a product manager have a disagreement. How would you handle it? How have you handled it in the past? What are you looking for in your next job? What do you value next in your next job? Right?
Right. The very broad questions, right? But they're kind of they cover a lot at the end of the day.
Yeah. So know that stuff. So I spent the week preparing that stuff and realizing like, oh man, I got a lot of work to do. So one large recommendation I would make is actually Alex has a book. He's published a book.
Yeah, it's called the iOS Interview Guide. It's kind of essentially it's covering a lot of those things that we just discussed, like iOS specific questions and iOS specific knowledge and design patterns. There are a lot of other books on algorithms, right? Like the
Cracking the coding interview.
Yeah, and like resources like LeetCode, but the iOS knowledge specifically is I've been writing that thing for many months now. It's out now by the time of this when this episode goes out, and it's essentially like all of those questions about iOS, like UI, outer layout, things we mentioned, and networking and core data and so on. It's all covered there, and specifically the format is question, then why it's asked, like what the interviewer is actually probing there, then best answer or like expected answer rather, and then for some of them red flag, right? Like please don't say like this specific thing, right? I don't know, frames versus outer layout. These days you probably want to prefer outer layout because it's a thing that Apple pushes is more robust for various screen sizes and so on, and lots of other benefits. But yeah, and that's the format of the book. So guys, check it out.
That was a huge help for me going through that. Refreshed so many things that I kind of just like had collected dust in a way, and I needed to just like dust off and just kind of refresh. And then there were tons of things in there that like, oh, I didn't know this. I definitely learned this, and I'm glad I read it because it made a huge help. I mean, so many times during interviews, I felt like it helped me out so much because I had that like base of knowledge from your book, and it was a huge help. So yeah, I just want to personally thank you for that book. It helped me out a lot. So yeah, I finished up spending that week preparing for interviews, and I decided, okay, I'm ready to start my job search, and I started applying online to jobs and reaching out to my network for job opportunities. While I was applying to places, I think one very useful thing is keep a spreadsheet, put the company name on there, the date you applied and the position you applied for. It helps you keep track of kind of what's going on. It could be it can get a little unwieldy trying to hold things in your head or like just not have it in one place.
Well, and also after all, right now you kind of doing it full time, right? I remember you being like, we met at some point in Subway, right? Like in the morning I was going to work and you were going to, well, your work, and in this case job hunt.
Right.
So yeah, that's actually, if you think about it, you have 8 hours now instead of doing work at work. You actually can spend it on this job hunt and like preparing for interviews and so on.
Finding a job was my job. That's what I would say.
And it's a lot, and you need to keep track of it. So yeah.
Reaching out to your network, you will be surprised who in your network, who will be the people that will help you find connections and give you introductions. And this is another side note. It's very heartwarming seeing seeing these people like basically message you and say, hey, I heard the news. Sorry to hear it. Can I help you in any way? Or like, hey, I know someone who's hiring. I can give them your information. This is actually one like silver lining of it. You see the good come out in people that you've worked with. So that was a really great feeling, the support that I received. And when I reached out to people, a lot of people were very very helpful, and were like asking, how can I help you? What can I do? I know these people. Let me send your information to them. Okay, you want me to go over your resume? It was great. Yeah. So I applied to places, and actually, I started getting nervous because I wasn't receiving. So I wasn't. After applying online, this is mostly to the places I applied online. I wasn't receiving responses. It had like 1 or 2 weeks passed, or I guess yeah. I wasn't getting responses. About one and a half weeks passed, and like no one was reaching back to me, and I was thinking like, oh my god, like I'm not gonna get a job.
Am I that bad? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Is my resume? Did I put the wrong phone number or the wrong email or something? But I would say about 2 weeks later, the responses started rolling in. Although not everyone replied back. Some people never replied back. So I had about 1 year of experience as an iOS developer. So I'm still junior. A year ago, when I was doing the job search with basically no professional experience, I had a 4-month internship and I had done side projects. It was way more difficult. It was a very difficult job hunt. But I come from San Antonio, Texas, but I wanted to work in the Bay Area specifically. So I was working really hard. I actually came here and went to meetups and trying to meet people. And eventually, of course, I wound up working at Winilo. But it was a struggle. And so during that 1 to 2 weeks of me not receiving responses, I was like, oh no.
Is it back to that, huh?
Oh no. It's happening again. I'm going to have to schlep my way through this. But yeah, no, slowly people did start replying. Granted, not everyone. And a lot of the responses I got back from the people who did say, hey, sorry, we're not going to move forward with the application, it was basically saying, you're still too junior. So yeah, I feel like at the 1 year mark, opportunities are much better, but you still have a lot of employers saying, it's just not enough, you're still junior. But yeah, One thing that I also did learn is referrals are incredibly effective, and like I guess everyone always says this. It's like common knowledge, but I just feel like it's worth repeating because sometimes you hear things so much that you forget how important they are. But yeah, I would apply to certain companies and I would not hear back from them. I would apply like 1 or 2 weeks ago and I never heard back. Then I had a friend might refer me to the company and I would have like a referral to that company. And all of a sudden, literally the next day, I'm getting an email from the recruiter saying, oh, hey, we got this referral. Meanwhile, I'm in their system for the past 1 or 2 weeks, never getting a response from them or even getting a rejection response. But now all of a sudden, because I have a referral, the next day or the day after that, I'm getting contacted by a recruiter. It's huge. Referrals make a huge difference. I think that's the best way of finding leads in terms of an employer.
So I'm curious. So those referrals were from your personal network, like previously that you built previously, or that people you found like while you were in this process, or like Matt, I guess,
Right. So yeah, I've only been in the Bay Area for a year, so my network is actually not that huge, right? I've only been here for a year. On top of that, Winilo is a small company, so I didn't get to meet a million people. So I think that the people who reached out were employees of Winilo currently, previous employees of Winilo that I had worked with, people I had met at other kind of smaller set of people is like people I had kind of met at meetups and different events and kind of got connected to them through there. So those are the kinds of the people. Okay, so yeah, during this time now at this point, I'm pretty much in the interview process. I'm taking phone calls, the screening phone calls from recruiters, and setting up technical screens after that if I do well enough on the recruiter screen to do phone screens, and also as I'm doing these phone screens, I'm of course still studying the algorithms questions, the iOS knowledge questions, staying studying for those things. Which, by the way, I thought here's one silver lining of being laid off that I think is quite nice. You now have all this time to do nothing but focus on preparing for interviews, studying for those algorithms questions and those iOS specific questions and whatnot. So it's great. So that's what I was doing. And yeah, about the fifth or sixth week after being laid off, I was able to get a few on-sites lined up. So the places I interviewed on-site were Affirm, Pandora, Reddit, and Uber.
Nice, good names there.
Yeah. So I was very excited. All these companies, I felt honored to that they were even considering me, and I had a good experience with all of them. And yeah, I tried my best at all of them as best as I could. And I was impressed with everyone who interviewed me. I was very impressed that I felt like, hey, I could learn a lot from them, and that, hey, I think they're very passionate about what they're doing here, which goes to show that it reflects very positively on all those companies. Going in there, it's great to see these kinds of people. I love people with good energy that are passionate about their work. I think it's infectious.
So after that, you kind of went through interviews, right? And then the good stuff starts to happen, right? You start to receive offers.
Yeah. The best part, especially with the stress of interviewing, you go through all this stress, and then finally someone says, "We think you're good enough to work with us. Here's an offer." And it's like, okay, thank you. I made it. Someone actually likes me. They really like me. So I received offers from Uber, Pandora, and Reddit. All great offers from all very great companies. It was a very hard decision for me to make. They're all working on great solving their own unique set of great problems. Each company has their own unique personality, so I think that reflects on the people who work there. But every person in their own way at each company, in their own unique way, I could tell was really passionate about what they're doing and very, very good, very competent at what they were doing. So it was a very hard decision, but ultimately I decided to join Reddit.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. It's great. I'm super excited to start working at Reddit. I think Reddit is going to be a great fit for me, and I hope to show to them that I am my best work, and really learn a lot there, and really contribute a lot there, and meet some great people there, and form some great relationships there. So all in all, I was from being laid off to on the first day of my job. It's going to be almost exactly 2 months of not having a job. I wanted to share this episode because I think this is a very unique experience. So I think it's going to make for something great that people who if they're ever in a position like me can listen to and learn from, and I hope it helps them. And I hope you got something. I hope you got something from this. So I guess here I want to close with some key takeaways that I think, at least for me personally, are things that I will remember if this were to ever happen to me again, or if a friend reached out to me about being laid off, I can kind of tell them these things that I learned. So one is sign up for unemployment insurance immediately. So this is United States specific, but it's going to start as soon as you sign up. The benefits are going to start as soon as you sign up, not when you were actually laid off. Other key takeaway: take a bit of a break, but then get right back into it. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Just spend whatever time you need to kind of process the emotion. but don't dwell on it and feel sorry for yourself. Like Alex said, he saw me the next week on the subway headed out. He's like, "Hey, where are you going?" I said, "Hey, I'm going to work, man. My job is finding a job." I treated it like a job. I didn't go to stay in my room dressed in I didn't stay dressed in my room in shorts or something and like a t-shirt. I put on my clothes as if I was going to go for a day of work. I went out and I did my job of finding a job. Other key takeaway, reach out to your network. This is huge. You will be surprised by who can help you. Just reach out to your network. People, you'll be surprised who can help you. Other key takeaway, keep a positive mindset. It is going to be stressful. There's really no way around it. Interviewing is a stressful process. It's even more stressful when you don't have a job and you have insecurity of whether you're going to find a job or not, as you're facing this kind of financial deadline. So try to stay positive. Other key takeaway, this isn't your fault. This isn't a personal failure. Don't take this personally. For whatever reason, business did not need your position anymore, and unfortunately, you had to be laid off. But don't take it personally. And lastly, know your stuff. You need to, now that you've been laid off, you need to study for those interviews. Take time to solve algorithms, problems on leetcode.com or cracking the coding interview. Prepare, answers for the common questions like what's your biggest weakness? What's the hardest technical challenge you've ever worked on and how did you solve it? And like I was saying earlier, know your iOS specific knowledge. And in particular, Alex has that great book that I recommend for you guys.
It's as we mentioned, it's called the iOS Interview Guide. We'll put a link to that in show notes, so you guys can check it out. And Andrea and I, we thought, kind of reflecting on this experience of his, we probably also gonna put together a another resource.
Yeah.
For maybe not people in similar situation, but really people who are like looking for jobs and kind of something to aid them with this whole process, right?
Yeah. So basically, I want to take note of my interview process, the kinds of questions I was asked, and what you need to study for, and how you should, work through the process, how you should keep a spreadsheet and like keep track of who you're applying with and different strategies and things that I learned. I'd like to collect that in a document of some sort and share that with you guys.
We kind of trying to gauge interest for this thing. So if you guys are curious what that's gonna be, please, we'll again have a link in show notes, but go there and sign up. We would love to talk to you first about this as well, because we kind of we want to help you as much as possible. So actually chatting with you would be the best way for us to figure out what specifically we put in this resource. It's probably going to be like a PDF document of some kind.
Okay, guys, thanks for listening. I hope you learned a lot from this. It was a big learning experience for me, and
congrats to Andrew with his new job.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. All right, guys, take care.
Bye.